Hi everyone, Robert Villanueva here today. Just wanted to talk to you about expired mastery. What's expired mastery? Well, it's basically just how to master the art of going after expireds. The beauty, of course, of expires is that there is an abundance of them. Right now, at this very moment, as I'm filming this video, we're in a market where there's very little expireds. But I'm going to talk about that in regards to how to attack even when there is very few expireds. Let's talk a little bit in regards to the time as to when you pick up the phone and call these expireds. Okay, and let me get to a couple of points here, and I'll definitely be a little more specific as to why I'm bringing these points up. Between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., your competition is probably anywhere from about 2 to 5 realtors. Okay, between the hours of 8 and 9 a.m., your competition is anywhere from 25 to maybe as many as 50 realtors. And then once you get on the other side of 9 o'clock, you're probably looking at 40 to 75 realtors plus. Okay, these aren't exact numbers. Of course, I'm just using them as an example. Why is this important? Because the time you start calling the expireds is, in some cases, as important, and if not more important, than the skills that you have when you're calling expireds. Now, keep in mind, the hours between 7 and 8, the do not call, the whole reason for the do not call is because we're not supposed to be calling people before 8 o'clock. But I'm giving you that number simply because of the fact that there are other ways of going about it around that DNC, and for that matter, maybe even just starting right at that 7:59 shotgun, boom, getting on the phone and calling. The next thing is the frequency. Okay, the frequency as in how many times we call the expireds on that very first day. Now, when you get expireds for that very first, the new list of expireds for the day, I want you to call them 5 times. Okay, and the reason I want you to call them 5 times is because 99.9% of realtors that are actually calling expires is they call them one and done. They don't get a hold of them, they get voicemails, wrong numbers, all that other good stuff, and next thing you know, they're just simply moving on to the rest of their day. I want you to call 5 times in the day. Now, on average, let's say for example, you have 5 properties. You're using a service provider that's giving you these phone numbers. Each property is going to give you, in a sense, as an example, 2 to 3 phone numbers for each home. So you have 5, you get 3 numbers, you're talking about 15 available numbers for 5 houses. You're going to go through and you're going to call every single one of those numbers. Once you've completed that very first round, ideally it's going to be around 8:20, 8:30, 8:35-ish, again, depending on the number of expireds you have. You're going to finish that list and you're going to go right back to the top and call it a second time. You heard that right. You're going to go back to the top and call them a second time. However, what I want you to do this second round is, of course, you're going to eliminate all of the people that basically told you not interested, the numbers that are no longer in service, all of these other numbers. You're looking for the people you didn't get a hold of. Go through that second round. Once you're done with the second round, well, guess what you get to do? Yep, you're going to do it again. Third round, immediately right after. So you're going to do round 1, round 2, round 3, back to back to back. And of course, at this point in time, you're going to move on to another source. You move on to your database, just listed, just sold. You move over to for sale by owners, probates, whatever it is. Once you think you're done with contacting all of your, in a sense, contacts from all the different sources, you're going to go back to round number 4. So what does that look like? Round 1, round 2, round 3, a couple of database calls, a for sale by owner call, a handful of just listed calls, maybe a probate call, maybe an investor call, and then just when you think you're done, you're going to go back that 4th round. Now, where do I call that 5th round? You said 5. Okay, so that 5th round, I want you to call them after 5 p.m. And why are you going to call them after 5 p.m.? Because these are the people that are working the 8 to 5ers, the 9 to 5ers. They can't have their phone available with them, so they put them in a locker, they put them somewhere else, and you're going to call them after 5 o'clock. Don't cheat. Don't call them at 4, 4:30, 4:45. Call them at or after 5 o'clock for this very specific reason. Okay, so that's the frequency. Number 3, what I want you to do is I want you to identify your top 3 cities and your top 3 zip codes. Let's start with the zip codes. The reason I want you to identify your top 3 zip codes is because those are the ones that I want you to attack first. Okay. Why is this important? Let's say, for example, as you're watching this, because this could be years by the time that you see this and we're in a different market, let's say it's a down market and there's a lot of expireds. and you have 30 expireds for the day you have available to you. Now, you have 30 expireds, 3 numbers per, that's 90 numbers. That's a lot of numbers you're gonna have to dial. Now, let's say, for example, the one that you want to go after in that zip code or that type of property, let's say it's number 72 on that list. By the time you call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50, 60, 72, well, that could be an hour and a half later. So I want you to just simply prioritize it from a top 3 zip codes and, of course, your top 3 cities. So that's a way of just kind of organizing a little bit better. The other thing I want you to do is get out there and door knock. Okay, now why do I want you to door knock is because look at your competition. How many people, how many agents do you have competing with you when you're at the door? 1, 2, maybe 3? Well, when you're on the phone, you already know you're going to have 50, 70, 100 people that you're competing with. At the door, it's way different. You have to have the courage. Go up, knock on that door, use your expired script, and do everything you possibly can to, of course, secure that listing. Now, let's say, for example, the person isn't home. So you knock on that door, nobody answers. What do? What do I want you to do? I want you to knock on the 2 neighbors to the right of the home as you're facing it, the 2 doors to the left as you're facing it, and the 5 doors behind you. You're gonna go ahead and say, I was trying to get that property sold, and we noticed that it's no longer in the market. How do I get a hold of that seller? Now, the 225, you can turn it into 5510. You can do whatever it is you want. My point being is go and knock on those neighbors. Point number 6, let's talk about the quantity. The quantity, going back to my previous point, I don't want you being in a position where you're dialing that many numbers. I'd like you to be in a position where you can probably look at a 30-minute radius. And what do I mean by that? Well, it'll take you 30 minutes to get to, this part of town. So you're gonna look at that and you're gonna identify that 30-minute radius and you're gonna be calling that geographically. Now, if you're getting a lot, you can narrow it down to the point where you probably have anywhere from about 15 to 20 homes. That's probably about the max you're gonna wanna call on an average day. Now, the next thing is, what do you take when you knock on a door? What I want you to take is I want you to take really just one sheet, very simple. And on that sheet, you're gonna have your plan of action. Your plan of action, and then on the back side is you might have maybe something like a letter or something. So one sheet, one side, you're gonna have your plan of action, and then of course on the back side, you're gonna have just maybe a small little letter of introduction. That's how simple it can get. You can get, of course, a lot more elaborate, preparing listing packets, doing all of these other things. The key and what's really gonna be the most masterful is gonna be knocking on that door and speaking to them. You get the opportunity to speak to them, work your magic. That's what you wanna work on. Now, we talked about in the market that we're in at this very moment, we're basically right now, July 2021. Right now, it's pretty high market, meaning it's a seller's market. There's not a lot of expires. There's very few expires that are coming on the market. Who should we call if there's no expires? Well, have you tried calling old expireds? Don't hesitate to go back 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, heck, even 5 years. Why? Because some of these expires were conditional. We've all heard it. We get those expires to say, well, if you could get me $500,000, $700,000, $1 million from a home, I would sell it. Then you go pull up the information on the home, you're like, $1 million? Their home is worth 1.1 million. So you want to be able to call some of those older expireds. Also, with old expireds, you'll notice that it's going to be, in some cases, it's a timing thing. 3 years ago, they put in for a job relocation. They got the job relocation. Well, come to find out that unfortunately they ended up closing that job. So now they ended up coming back, so they didn't make that move. Now they're revisiting the idea. So sometimes it's a conditional situation. So if you go back, call old expireds. I would encourage you. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is don't be hesitant to set a future appointment. What do I mean by setting a future appointment? Let's say, for example, you go on a listing presentation. It's an expired. You go up against 4 other realtors, 5 other realtors. They don't pick you. You call them up, and of course, they give you the bad news. They say, Robert, we decided to go with another realtor. We're not going to go with you. I'm going to go through and just simply ask them a couple of questions. What was the reason that they chose the other realtor? Is there anything I could have done a little bit better? Did you already sign the contract? Is there anything I can do that would better my position? Is there anything I can say that would put you in a position to sign with me? Let's say they no, and no. Now what I'll do is I'll say, I'm gonna wish you the absolute best. Okay? I'm hoping you get your property sold. However, if in case your property does not sell, may I set a future appointment when that contract basically expires? Don't be hesitant to set that future appointment. I went through this as quickly as I possibly could simply because of the fact that I always want to keep these videos as short and brief as possible. I'm sure that there's going to be a question or two, a comment or 5 or 20. Don't hesitate, send them my way. I will answer any and all questions. I will bridge that gap as to with whatever it is that maybe I did not address. Robert Villanueva here. I'm always going to be here for you. And of course, reach out to me at any given moment. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll see you at the top.